Dave Birkett here from Detroit Free Press, live on Radio Row, Super Bowl 59 with Dr. David Chao, Sports Injury Central. You've probably seen him on the internet. He's my go-to guy for a lot of injury analysis and information. And how you doing, first of all?
Good. You know, I feel like it's Groundhog's Day, right? You just
always, yeah.
It just seems like the same thing.
What Super Bowl is this for you?
Can I say close to the last?
Yeah.
I hope.
You and me
no
both.
offense. I mean,
unless the Lions are here, Lions fans. But yeah,
I'm coming in limping. I had a couple of trips on the way in and some kid stuff, and we got home late at night, so I'm not ready for New Orleans. But it's okay.
People always think the Super Bowl is this glamorous event, but really it's it's one of the busiest weeks of the year. And I can, you're away from your kids for a week and you're ready for it to end by the time it's over. So we sound spoiled talking about it.
I know we do sound spoiled, but I would imagine if your wife's like mine, she's like, oh, have fun. And it's like on the dockets on the family calendar, it's counted as you went on vacation for a week. Right. At least for me, because this is sort of not really my main money-making job. I still orthopedist. For you, I guess your wife would understand. It's how you work. It's work. Yeah. Now, I try and tell her it's work, and she's like, rolls her eyes. You're partying and watching football and hanging out with people. So,
she's entitled, if she's watching this, she's entitled to a vacation with the girls when you get back. So,
she took one before and after.
All right, there we go. All right, so I wanted to have you on to talk injuries because, as all the Lions fans out there know, man, injuries were a thing that really, maybe ruined their season this year. At the very least, they put them in a bad spot defensively. And you study injuries, injuries for a living. Let's start with Aidan Hutchinson, the biggest one. He talked about coming back for the Super Bowl. He was never going to be back, I don't think, for the Super Bowl. But how concerned would you be about him and the broken leg going forward?
Well, before we even get to Aidan Hutchinson, the injuries, there's no question in my mind, injuries cost the Detroit Lions a chance to do a lot more. And I can't say enough about the coaching, the team, and the players. Your defense was decimated with a capital D. The entire D line, basically, we talked about it. And then linebacker spot, even into the secondary. And I think it got covered up a little bit by how well the offense was doing, but also by the great scheme of your coordinator and head coach and, taking care of the Vikings. Everyone forgot. But at Sports Injury Central, we're like, I know Detroit throttled Minnesota and confused Sam Darnold with the blitz and what have you.
Right.
But now you have, a young quarterback, but a mobile quarterback. And I don't know that the Detroit defense faced someone like that. And the injuries came home to roost. It wasn't just one injury to Aiden Hutchinson. It's what we at Sports Injury Central talk about, cluster injuries. You had whole position groups wiped out. And defensively, it wasn't the same team that started the year, not even close. Right. Now, we knew Anzalone was going to come back, and that helped you quite a bit. But hats off to Detroit. You guys shouldn't be discouraged at all. There's no question. Because you all played so well, people forgot that how bad the injuries hurt you guys. And it's not an excuse. And this is why Sports Injury Central, we're like, don't look past Washington here. Not that the team did, but this is the playoffs. Things are tough.
You mentioned
things get exposed.
The cluster injuries. Have you found in your career when you were with the Chargers? I think most people out there know that, but that when injuries start at one position, they multiply like they did with the Lions this year. And why is that?
Injuries beget injuries, and I'll give you a common, easy example. We see it a lot on the offensive lines around the league. How do injuries beget injuries? First of all, with the salary cap, there's only a limited number of offensive linemen that you bring in and that you can retain and that can make you 53. So it's not infinite. And, it's not like camp and you had extra bodies, or like college. Like University of Michigan can, prior to NL, could line them pretty deep, right? Now, with salary cap, that already limits it. But here's how injuries beget injuries. So a starter is a starter, let's say, at left guard because they're dominant and they can move their feet. A backup isn't used to playing 60, 70 plays. And it's not like they all of a sudden they're starting the game. They're not used to starting. So they're stepping up their competition and they're hanging on for dear life. And sometimes they're throwing their defender into the guy next to him just because they don't want to give up the sack to the quarterback. And now you get your center hurt. because you're throwing the guy to the side just to hang on for dear life, or you're planting in and digging in and you get rolled up on, or the left tackle has to help the left guard and he gets injured. Like, injuries beget injuries. But also, don't forget about special teams. You think they get pulled off special teams once they're starting? No, the special teams guy still has them as special teams. So it becomes double duty and triple duty and so forth. So injuries beget injuries, not only with, let's say, your left knee, now it's your right hamstring, but the left guard to the center or other ways
That makes
around.
sense to me. I mean, I'd long thought about that because you do see that cluster effect like you talked about. Let's get back to Hutchinson for a second. I mean, obviously, serious injury, right? He underwent surgery, stayed overnight in the hospital in Dallas after it. If you were with the team, how concerned would you be about the recovery, about him coming back and being the same player the next season?
I'll give you the good news. I love talking about good news. I haven't examined Aiden Hutchinson. I didn't do surgeries. I didn't see his x-rays, but I would not be worried much at all.
Okay.
I do expect
Take solace, Lions fans.
100% recovery for him. Okay, Paul George, NBA player, Olympian, similar open fracture. There's lots of other examples. I fully expect, this is not a, blanking on his name. He's from San Diego, Alex Smith issue from Washington. This is not an open fracture dislocation that gets infected. There's no infection going on here. It's a tibial shaft fracture. People do very well with rotting. This is not an Alex Smith situation. Expect him back 100%. That is the good news of all of this. The bad news, now that it doesn't matter anymore, I agree with you. He was never going to play in the Super Bowl. Okay. He was never going to be Aiden Hutchinson in a Super Bowl. Could he have somehow found his way onto a roster spot because you were so thin? Right. Well, sure. Okay. Sure. But there was no way, because look, 0.2 seconds is the difference between Aiden Hutchinson and a guy. 0.4 seconds is the difference between Aiden Hutchinson and out of the league, right? Yeah. I mean, and when you break your leg, it's not just about the leg healing. It's about all the other associated damage. I mean, let's say a pipe breaks in your house. Well, I got the pipe fixed. Yeah, but what about all the water damage? How long is it going to take before you refix the cabinets and the floors and redo the furniture legs that were stained? But there's a lot going on. It's called a fracture disease, associated damage. And yes, I know when he started running, in the underwater treadmill, there was a lot of excitement. And my line at the time, and I got some grief for it, like I was belittling him. I wasn't, but my line was, look, he's running in water, not walking on water. It's common. Yeah. That's how you partial weight bear train. Yeah. That's nothing unusual, but that doesn't mean he's ready to play. And look, it didn't matter in the end, and the more came up, but let's go with the good news. No worries for next season, including game one.
There you go, Lions fans. I mean, I think they do have some concerns maybe for game one. We'll see if Aleem McNeely tore his ACL late in the year.
Way more concern for Aleem McNeil coming back, and maybe some of the others. But Aiden Hutchinson timeline, ready for the start of the season and a big 2025 season, not worried.
Okay, so Derek Barnes tore his MCL and PCL. He was going to be back, or, his timetable was similar to Aiden's in that he would have been ready, let's just say February, March, just to throw that out there. Marcus Davenport tore his tricep. He's a free agent like Derek Barnes. Malcolm Rodriguez coming off a torn ACL. Aleem McNeil coming off a torn ACL.
Your guy Dave just defined cluster injuries.
There you go.
Part of the line.
They kept coming. Are there any of those beyond just the timetable that, as you saw the video evidence of them that
Aleem McNeil's the biggest worry. I think that's going to be tough to be ready for the start of the season. Tough, not impossible, but I mean, if you can get him back for the second part of the season to be himself, that would be pretty good. And so that's what the hope has to be.
And if you're the Lions team that's aiming for the Super Bowl, that's certainly, you don't necessarily need him for week one. You want him healthy for down the road.
Yes.
A couple more minutes here. Dr. David Chao, Sports Injury Central. One question I get often, and look, some of the Lions injuries this year were freak injuries. Aiden Hutchinson broke his leg when he hit his teammate. Khalil Dorsey, the same thing. He's in midair and he collides with his teammate. Even Aleem McNeil, he's lunging for a sack, sort of extends that leg a little too far, and the leg hyperextends, I guess, and tears his ACL. I get lots of questions about, well, do they have to look at the training staff? Is it about the turf? Is it when people ask you these questions, what's your response?
Well, in general, turf has a higher predilection for certain ankle, foot, and knee injuries by a little bit. It's not as big as people think. I'm an advocate that all things being equal, grass is better, but not all things are equal. If you ask an NFL player, first of all, not all turf fields are equal in the conditions. But if you ask an NFL player, would they rather play on a quality artificial grass, well maintained, or ruddy, uneven, beat up natural grass
The
in
old
the winter?
Soldier Field that the Lions were at a lot. There
You know, they would look, it's about the smoothness and continuity of it is number one. And the other thing is, yes, sometimes you get your foot stuck in the artificial grass, but that has to do with the shoe wear and the cleats too. You know, it's a trade-off. They want traction, right? And when you get too much traction, sometimes it becomes a different story. So it's too simplistic to blame one thing. And as far as the medical staff is concerned, like this happened to me a bunch. You'd be injuries and the GM would look at me and, oh, here we go again, and start giving me grief. And I'm surprised the late great AJ Smith, I said this to him once, and yes, I got away with it. He
former Chargers general manager.
He had a little bit of bark in him, as people would notice. And I literally said to him, he goes, here we go again, injuries. I literally said to him, Coach, everyone's coach in the building. Coach, I'm Paul Revere. I'm not the British. I'm just telling you the injuries are here.
Yeah.
They're coming. I didn't cause the injuries.
You didn't start
I'm
the
not
fight
the
there,
British.
huh?
I didn't
Yeah.
bring in the evasion. I'm just telling you they're coming. I mean, we got to deal with it, kind of thing. And in my experience, before Lions fans say, let's look at the doctors or the trainers, if they're not getting guys back quickly, you could look at doctors and trainers. If they're not preventing repetitive injuries, you might look at them. But the routine things that happen, the collision injuries that happen, but also some medical staffs, believe it or not, are not that involved on the prehab or prevention side in the front. Sometimes that's strength and conditioning. Sometimes that's sports science. So I think you have to look at each individual situation without just casting blame. You know, it's like, oh, that DB should have been there. Well, you better know the scheme. And was it a cover 2 or a cover 3? Did he have help over the top? Was he supposed to do X? You got to know the whole picture before you can assess the blame. And I'd say the same with medical things as well.
Makes sense to me. One injury we didn't talk about, Carlton Davis with the broken jaw. What is the recovery? Because people sort of looked at that and said, how can he not be back? But it's a broken jaw. You can't eat. You're wired shut.
Well, first of all, broken jaws, fortunately, are not that common because of the face mask, unless you get hit up underneath. Now, wired shut, sometimes plated. But if you can't have nutrition, how do you play, right? And I mean, you also have to communicate when you're out there and talk and just the pain itself, right? So, yeah, he might have come back for the Super Bowl. I would hope so, but we don't know. We'll never know.
Well, Dan said he would not be back. And I sort of, Alex Anzalone came back. He was healed, but he's playing with
I love
cast
Coach
on his
Campbell.
arm, essentially, yes.
From his first press conference, I want that guy to succeed. You know what it is? Because people often ask me, what kind of coach? Is a fiery coach, a player's coach, it's called an authentic coach. And no one can doubt Dan Campbell's authenticity.
Yeah.
That's him.
That's
And
it.
so the players love it. And I love it. But he also said, no offense, Coach Campbell, don't bite my kneecap. Alex Anzalone was done. Alex Anzalone came back. Yeah, they also said David Montgomery was done. And for the year.
was definitely the one that
And I said, I don't know. Based on what I see, I don't even think he needs surgery, but I don't think he's done. And then surgery was announced, and I was like, maybe it's more than an MCL. Who knows? Maybe the first opinion doctor said one thing. I'm not doubting Dan Campbell's honesty. He's very honest in terms of his messaging, but sometimes you have to let it sort itself out first. So I don't know, and David Montgomery was an example where we're just like, look, maybe we got it wrong. By video, we think he's coming back and he's okay. Looks like we're wrong here and we didn't delete anything. And thankfully, he is a guy that did come back.
He did. He'll be here on Radio Row later this week. Keep it here on Freep.com. We will have an interview with him and Jahmyr Gibbs. And that was the case of, the first doctor said that he should have surgery, and subsequent evaluation said he didn't
And
need it.
before you
Lions
start
team
jumping
doctor
and
thought he
saying,
had surgery.
the Lions team doctor, I don't know which doctor, look, it's not wrong. It may have been an option, but yeah, I just looked at it and said, it doesn't fully make sense, and it is what it is.
All right, very last injury question for you. Just in your history, you get a lot of injuries one year. What is the likelihood that they repeat the next year? The injuries beget injuries year after year, or is there any rhyme or reason to how they come?
Before you hate me, the real answer is it depends. If there are a lot of, no offense, Aleem McNeils that are leaking in the next season, potentially, but if the GM fills those spots, you can mitigate. Now, if it's a lot of Aiden Hutchinsons where you're not worried about, they're supposed to be independent. Look, if you will roll snake eyes once, the chance of rolling snake eyes aren't any less the next time. It's the same. Or 7 once, it's the same the next time. So it should be independent. Sometimes there's some trends around the league, but it's rare that you are at the bottom of the league injuries one year and still the bottom the next. One thing we did, I'll let you know a little secret, at Sports Injury Central, there were 3 teams last year that were outliers on the healthiest teams in the league. And we looked at them and their records.
You're talking the 24 season.
The 24 season. And for example, the Raiders were one of them. They were really healthy the previous season. And we're like, they're not going to be able to sustain that amount of health and under on their futures for next season. So it can work both ways. You're healthy one year doesn't mean you're healthy the next. You probably regress more to the mean. If you're unhealthy, Detroit Lions, hopefully there's nothing to do but go up. And hopefully that'll be the case for Detroit.
I know Lions fans are hoping that. All right, before we get going, you mentioned it, the futures. I know there's a component of Sports Injury Central that certainly caters to fantasy football players, to the sports gamblers out there. So tell everyone out there how they can.
We do injury analysis, whether it's for fandom, whether it's for prize picks, whether it's for props, whether it's for gambling, whether it's for futures. It's injury analysis. We're the medical Mike Pereira, and we're the only place that has medical information analysis from former team physicians. So we talk about insider knowledge, not insider information. Big difference. Look, you want your analysis from a guy like you. You want your commentary on TV from former players and coaches. So I'm a former team doc, and that's all we do. Get former team docs who have been in the business, who can look between the lines and at the other side of what's happening and share some insider knowledge.
Well, I follow him on social media. You should too. Sports Injury Central, Dr. David Chao. Thanks for joining us here. Thanks for helping everyone out there, Lions fans, understand the massive amount of injuries they had and how they impacted the season. Again, Dr. David Chao, Dave Birkett, Freep.com here on Radio Row, Super Bowl 59.